We're doing a top 10 list, power ranking list of the teams from last split post major. Who do we think the best teams are now that we've seen the whole split happen? Just picking from the teams that existed last split. So not any new teams, any roster changes. We're not counting any of that.
Oi,
And
oi.
so yeah, we got Nugget here. Picking
Hi.
first.
Oh,
Yeah, that's Nugget. Say hello, Matrix. Say hello.
Hi.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so we're gonna go left to right. So I'll ask you, Nugget. You can pick your tenth team.
okay. My 10th team is Luminosity Gaming.
Luminosity. No way.
Luminosity. Oh no. Is this a trend?
This is a trend. No, for
Oh,
me,
for
Oh
me,
fuck.
it's Moist Esports. What about you, Matrix?
okay, I went space station.
Okay, Space Station. All right, so thoughts on Nugget Luminosity. For me,
I say no.
yeah. What?
Whoa.
So Matrix, you don't like the Luminosity pick?
Well, I just think there were better performing teams in NA that didn't make the major.
Yeah,
I think Luminosity got lucky with their brackets.
Mm.
I think Luminosity regionally weren't that great. I think they were. They got a better result at the major. The biggest one is probably going to Game 5 against Vitality. I think that's like the
That that
only.
that really impressed me, to
I
be
think
fair.
it's the only saving grace for Luminosity. Without that, they're not even like in the conversation. I feel like for 10th, so it's the only
Oh
one that's
shit.
keeping them in the conversation. But honestly, I would have probably rated SSG higher. But they are close. Luminosity has that Game 5 against Vitality. SSG had the unluckiest run of the split of all time, other than losing to OG, and they're a great team. They got Nolly on this. No, I'm just kidding. They're not that great, but they only have like one bad loss, is what I'm trying to say. So I do
Yeah.
I do somewhat rate Space Station. Um, but for me, moist. If you just look at consistency throughout the whole split, then fair enough. But this is more like power rankings right after the major, looking at all the teams that existed
Mhm.
at that point. And by the end of the split, Moist really started performing the way I expected them to. If you look at their results, top four, they beat a bunch of the EU teams that went to the major. I'm pretty sure, including Gentlemates and stuff like that, Oxygen, some teams like that. I'm not sure if it was both of them, but I'm pretty certain on at least Gentlemates there. So making that top four run in Europe for me kind of was like, yeah, if they were at the major, they'd probably be 10th at least for me. So
The thing I have them for is they didn't even make top 16 one of the weeks.
no, I know, but they were beaten by but in the lower bracket at least they were beaten by a team who made top 16 at least. So losing to top 16 EU team, I know it wasn't that great, and losing
Mm.
to EU teams isn't as bad as losing to NA teams. But it was bad. But
Mm.
look at the third. For me, it's just look at the third qualifier, and I think they would perform like that again. If there was a fourth qualifier, I think they would have replicated it. It's basically my take. So if you don't think they would have made
Okay.
another top four, then I can see why you wouldn't put them there. If you think that was actually just like, oh, a bit of a one-off, then that's why you would put Lumi instead of Moist. But yeah, no, I think they would have done it again. Is essentially what I'm trying to say. So,
Fair.
are there any other teams in conversation for 10th? There probably are. Rule 1,
Complexity. Complexity is one of them.
Complexity possibly. Rule 1, but I don't think losing to Power.
I wasn't impressed by Rule One at the major.
No, they
They
looked
should have. I
underwhelmed.
feel like they should have been the team at 10, but the way they performed at the major was like, you can't put them 10th. Like, you can't
And
do that
now
poorly at the major and then put them 10th.
now Pro
Yeah.
was literally 1v3ing. I'm not
He
even
kind of
joking.
was. He kind of was. Yeah. It was not the greatest thing to see, and it's a shame because they were better regionally. I feel like than that at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is. And then Power, I mean, they got a win over Rule 1, so maybe you say, okay, they're in a conversation for 10th best in the world. But then when they played against BDS and G2, like they get like one close game, but like overall it just felt pretty one-sided. Like you can't be losing that that much against them and be considered top 10. Like if I put Moist there, or even Lumi or Space Station, I think all three of those teams would do better against both BDS and G2 than they did. So that's why,
Yeah.
I don't have power there. So do we have any other teams to speak about? EU maybe,
mean,
because I got Moist. The other teams would be
Oxygen?
Magnifico. Yeah, Magnifico and Oxygen would be the other
Magnifico were
teams.
pretty good. Yeah.
I think I would have probably favored Oxygen. I think they had the better, like, you could call it recency bias, like the more recent results. Because Magnifico just didn't have that shit Oxygen qualifier 1.
Yeah.
So that probably put them higher in the rankings by the end. But I think, looking at that third and second qualifier, I think Oxygen were actually better than Magnifico. So I probably would have put them ahead of Magnifico. But they're really close. They're very interchangeable. But yeah, there's that. All right, are we all good on 10 now? Have that
Yeah.
Yeah.
conversation
9,
complete? All right, Nugget, what's your number 9?
It's my number 9.
Yeah,
Actually,
bro.
it's SSG. I thought they were better.
Oh, Space Station. Okay, Space
Them going
Station.
against Gen G 3 times in a row was very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, for me it's complexity. So can I just ask you already then? Have you not put in complexity in top 10?
Complexity were my 11th.
Okay, what was your
They're like
ninth matrix?
Mine's also complexity.
Complexity. Nugget, man. Okay, you're gonna have to do some explaining because I feel like complexity was like so clearly ninth for me. I couldn't see them anywhere else on the list. Explain why he's not top 10 or why they're not top 10.
Well, I had Lumi, Space Station, Complexity all in like the same bit because I did them last, right?
Yeah.
And I was looking at them like I don't know how to rate these teams because I thought they all play very well, but Complexity made the major, SG didn't. They were in Sam to be fair, but I don't know. I didn't really see much of them at the major as much as I wanted to, so I was a bit disappointed by their performance. So I was like, I'll put them outside. So I put SSG ahead of them.
Yeah.
And I thought SSG were better than Lumi, so I put SSG ahead of Luminosity.
I should remind you though that complexity they had in round 5 they had a really close series against Shenji. It says 3-1, but if you look at it, it was actually a bit of a throw. It could have easily gone to game 5. Complexity could have easily won, and they're higher up this list, so that's somewhat relevant. And then you look at your list, complexity, they won against Luminosity, like, and they're on your list. They're on 10th, and then they
Okay.
also went on to beat Pioneers, which is like irrelevant. But they also went to Game 5 against Carmine Corp, so that's another
Yeah.
For me,
It's
the results
they
in the
were
major
all
should be above your 9th and 10th at least.
yeah, they were all really close for me, and I was just like, I don't really know how to put these, so I kind of based it a bit more personal. But
Yeah. I think if you just go major results, I think complexity definitely should be above your 9th and 10th that you have.
Okay.
If you go with major results.
Yeah.
And then regionally as well, they did win one of the regionals, but it was the furthest
Furia.
back. It was the furthest back. The more recent two were both Furia, so I get that that's not too impressive. But and this might be a bit like not good to do, but if you even look at last season, like Complexity were really good, and we both had their players. Even Matrix had AJG in the top 20 players of last year, so they all have like really good players, and then they got Dorito in to replace AJG, which is a bit of a nothing change probably. So I don't really expect them to go up or down from that. I did feel like the rest of the competition went up, and so they kind of went down overall in the standings because of that probably,
Yeah.
which is why I have them ninth. But yeah, I think they were still really good. So yeah, that's just my disagreement there, I guess.
That's fair.
Do you have any? Do you really rate Space Station? Any particular reason you really rate them?
I still think I didn't. I mean, I looked at that team right, and I'm like, okay, they should do well. And then they went against Genji 3 times, and Genji are a very, very, very good team. And I
Yeah,
just think they probably would have beaten Lumi to the major if they didn't run into Genji 3 times in a row.
yeah. No, that's fair. I do actually put Space Station above Lumi. And if you had Space Station above Lumi, but then Complexity as 10th and then Lumi 11th, I think it would have made a little bit more sense because Space Station we don't know for sure how they would have done, even though I think they did quite admirably. But yeah, I mean it is what it is, I guess. But I think it's good you have them above Lumi. I'll give you that. All right, should we go to 8th?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Alright.
so I don't know. Shit. My 8th is Vitality.
Team Vitality. Okay.
That I might need to explain that one, but
Yeah. Okay. My 8th is Genji Mobile One Racing. I'm gonna put the full name because why not? What about you, Matrix?
Mine is also Genji.
Genji Mobile One Racing.
I just think that like Genji again is like a pretty clear 8 because I mean they lost to Fury round 3, right? But then they lost to KC and then they lost to Gentlemates, which fair enough, Gentlemates, it was their like hero run through the bracket, but I think they didn't impress me, but I still think they were a good team.
Yeah, that's fair. So Nugget, why do you have Vitality 8th?
so already we know that they kind of struggled in Europe. They did not really have the greatest time, considering what they usually are capable of. I mean, they made top 8, but it wasn't the greatest run, and then they came second to be fair. But in major they struggled. Like they weren't doing too well in Swiss. It is Swiss, yeah, Swiss.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they went 3-2. They beat Complexity and they lost to Furia. They beat OG and they lost Falcons, and then they nearly lost to Lumi. But I don't know. I felt Redosin during the quarterfinals was really good, but I feel like that was their one big, like, finally back to Vitality performance, and then it kind of began to trail off again.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree. I actually was really annoyed at Vitality because I feel like they were really inconsistent, not just regionally, but at the major too. It's kind of weird how consistently inconsistent they were. They didn't have like a pop-off event. It was just like always you don't really between series don't know if it's going to be the same team the next series. Um, but I do think having Team Vitality in 8th slightly takes away from your Lumi argument in having them 10th because I feel like it was the only saving grace for them. So then if you put Vitality 8th, it kind of then makes your Luminosity like reasoning less strong. I feel like. Um, but Vitality, I think they still finished what 3rd in EU, right? They finished above
Yeah,
Gentamates. And
yeah,
maybe I'm EU biased, but I think their Furia win was pretty impressive. So I had them. I still have to like put them above Genji for me. Though I guess the reason you have Genji higher is what? Because they went to Game 7 against Gentlemates. Is that it?
Genji. They went to game 7. I thought they went to game 6.
No, they went to
Like
Game 7 against
they went to game
Gentlemates.
7. I do have them higher. To be fair, I do have them
No,
higher.
I doubt you don't
But
have them nonetheless. To be fair.
yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, so you have them higher. Is that mainly because of the Gentlemates thing, or?
I mean, Genji were like, I don't know. They did 3-2 again, but they beat G2, which I was impressed with. I mean, G2 looked a lot stronger by the end. Still shaky, but they looked a lot stronger. I don't know. Genji, they were much more what I expected from them, while Vitality was a letdown at this point.
Yeah.
So they're both similar like I'd say like skill teams. That I think if they went at each other, it'd be very, very close. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
think Genji slightly come out, but only slightly.
Yeah, to be fair, I will say that I feel like 1 through 8th, skill-wise, are really, really close. So these, a lot of these positions will be interchangeable. And if you like mix all our lists, then you probably roughly end up with like the actual results and that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, these are kind of tough. So yeah, Matrix. Why do you have Genji the lowest out of the top 8? 'Cause, I mean, I do as well,
Lowest?
but yeah.
Well, simply because they had lost to other teams that were like in the top 8. I know they lost to I know they beat G2, but then they also in the region G2 kind of gave them weeping in most. I think it was 2 of the regionals, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes. In 1 and 2,
In
they
2 of
got
the
like
regionals.
annihilated.
So it's even. So I'm not. I think that's more of just like another any matchup that could go either way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Gen G was a really tough one, especially because their wins for me were like, well, it's against Complexity, which is like, right below them in my one. So it's kind of like I expect them to win against Complexity, and then their other win was against G2, which they, who they won against in the last regional. So, it's not too surprising to see the second best NA team win against the first NA team. I kind of wish that they played against an EU team and won against them, because it probably would have like sold it more for me. G2, I feel like they didn't really play that well in the Swiss. I feel like that kind of showed. They kind of got bopped by BDS in the Swiss. So, I don't know. G2, I feel like they were inconsistent, so that's why I didn't, I guess, rate that win over them that much. But yeah, like I said earlier, it's kind of interchangeable. So I don't actually mind the Team Vitality 8th pick, but I could just as easily see them in like 4th somehow.
Literally
So yeah.
one like win could easily move them up
I
or
mean, yeah,
down.
imagine they win against Gentlemates in that game 7, then suddenly it's a
Then
completely
they're
different conversation.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
guess what I said leads into my number 7th, which is Genji.
okay, I'll put them down. Genji Mobile 1 Racing. Okay. My 7, I have to look this up, is Furia Esports. What about you, Matrix?
Mine is Vitality.
Team Vitality, okay. Okay, so I guess the big conversation here is you guys have Furia above Vitality. I guess that's the conversation here. So why is that the
Um,
case?
I'll start. I think just because Furia had such an impressive Swiss run, they of course beat Vitality in Game 5 in round 2. So I think even though they did get beat in playoffs, I don't think that was Furia that was at its best like it was in the Swiss.
Yeah, okay. What are you, Nugget? Just same?
But it's kind of about the same, yeah. They just
Yeah.
stepped up into it and then kind of dropped off in front of the crowd.
It was a shame, honestly. For Furia, it was one of those where for me, if I were to put them higher than this, I feel like they kind of had to win the quarterfinal against Vitality. Because I didn't really rate how Vitality were playing in the Swiss. So then when Furia get bopped by them in playoffs, then I was kind of like, oh, that just it was a one-off. So you could kind of look at it from both ways, I suppose. Because what Furia won in Game 5, so I kind of when you combine both series, Furia has like lost the series, but I guess that's not the way you should look at it. But yeah, I think Furia didn't actually play that great against Vitality. Furia did go 3-0, but I don't really think they were a 3-0 level team, I guess. They also beat Gen G, but considering all our lists, we kind of expect them to beat Gen G, and it wasn't like one-sided or anything. It was still a game 5. So they did absolutely bop Luminosity, which is another reason why I don't want to put Luminosity in top 10.
Okay.
But yeah, that's that, I suppose. Your number 6, unless you have more to say.
I don't think I have much more to say because I don't know why I'm following a nice little trend here. 6 for me is Furia.
Yeah.
6 for me.
Okay. Furia Esports.
Dominant in Swiss stage, and I thought, okay, I think it'll be close against Vitality, and then I looked at their gameplay during the LAN. I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? This
Yeah.
is not the same Furia.
For me, I went BDS.
Team BDS. Okay. And I've got Team Vitality. So we've done the whole. Oh, well, me and Nugget have done the whole Furia Vitality thing now. Matrix still has to put Furia in. You must really rate their Swiss run. So what's wrong with BDS? What's the problem?
I just think that sure they were kind of performing, but I feel like Monkey Moon had one of, if not the worst LAN performance I've ever seen from him in a long time. Going back a couple months. I do think Drali and Exotic were kind of sort of carrying as a as a duo. And I feel like that simply because how well Furia played in Swiss, I think all 3 players on Furia played really well. I think you have to kind of look at that and say, well, it's 3v2 basically.
Okay, magic jump cut, magic jump cut. Um,
Whoa.
so for me, BDS, I mean, they were so good regionally. I mean, they had like one regional where like they weren't like that amazing, but they were still really good. And then other than that, I mean, they went to like a bunch of game sevens against Carmine Corp and that kind of stuff. BDS until the major, they were like, they were right there, second in Europe, which is quite impressive, especially since even in this major, we could have easily had four teams in the top four. If BDS decided to actually show up in their quarterfinal.
Yeah, that was a shit show.
Yeah, the quarterfinal was really upsetting, but it was just one series, and the way Furia won in their Swiss, like even though they went 3-0, for me it still wasn't necessarily as impressive as BDS, considering BDS the only team they lost to was against the undefeated team in the event. Other than that, I guess they didn't really play that many good teams, and that's fair enough. But they kind of bopped G2, who ended up making the final. Um, and then they lost against G2 in the playoffs, unfortunately. But for me, it's considering the regional results. It was kind of proof that that quarterfinal isn't really the result that you would expect, even if they replayed it. Let's say the day after, they just said, "Okay, we're replaying the event. I expect BDS to win that quarterfinal." I don't know. Let's say at least 65% of the time.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think BDS for me has to be higher. Just off of power ranking. Just off of power ranking. Just yeah, has to be higher for me. I guess you agree, right, Nugget? Because you have them higher than sixth as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not by much, but I do have them higher than 6.
Any counter to that, Matrix?
Any counter? No, I don't think so. You raised good points.
You just take the L.
I still think that my sixth place is still not too out there.
No, that's fair. I understand why, but yeah, just some minor disagreements. All right, well, we'll move to your fifth, Nugget.
And so my 5th is Team BDS.
Team BDS. So you only had them higher by one. Fair enough. Where's my BDS? I don't remember. Oh, okay. So mine is G2 Stride. I have the grand finalist at number 5. What about you,
Okay.
Matrix?
Mine's now for you.
Now, okay, I was gonna say,
I was slightly worried.
if they weren't, yeah, that would have been,
They were not going any higher than that. I'm telling you now.
yeah. So I assume you guys have problem with my G2 one. So go ahead, attack me.
Well, it's just I don't. I think I was impressed first by the game 7 against Vitality because, of course, they obviously looked better than they did in Swiss, and then also going to game 6 against a very strong land team in Gentlemaids. I think G2 definitely should be proud of their performance this major, and it's not like they had like a Mickey run as well.
No, they didn't have a Mickey run, but not Mickey in a sense of the teams they beat were really good. Team Vitality, Team BDS, number 2, number 3 EU teams. Well, at least based on seeding, Gentlemaids kind of proved otherwise that they were the number 1 or number 2 team from EU. But G2 for me, like I said earlier, the Swiss wasn't great. It was decent, but it wasn't great. And then the playoff run, I think they kind of had a lifeline. I'm not gonna say they had a lucky victory against BDS at all, but they scored a goal to tie
By
things up.
Daniel.
The Daniel shot, and I feel like people don't react to this goal enough. In my opinion, it was the best goal of the tournament, but apparently that's an uncommon take. But regardless, that goal, that's not gonna be a goal that you're gonna score again. Like if you replay the match 5 times. Oh, or 10, even 10 times. I don't expect Daniel to score anything near that level of goal again. So I think it was a bit of a one-off goal. Some people call it lucky. I'm not really sure how intentional it was. But yeah, basically I'm trying to say I don't really expect that kind of goal to happen again. And then Monkey Moon unfortunately threw after, which isn't G2's fault. But basically what I'm trying to say is G2 got a goal that I don't expect them to get again, and then BDS were just like playing nothing like I expect them to, which is like I said earlier, I expect BDS to have at least like 65% chance of winning that series if they were to replay it. So naturally, I have them above G2.
I mean, speaking of Swiss, they beat KCP, Rule 1, and Power. Like, those aren't team. I guess Rule 1 you could put, like, 10th. But
Not after their
KCP,
results.
KCP didn't look good.
No.
Rule 1, apart from Nalpo, they look like shit. Like, they did not look good. And Power kind of got a little bit tossed by the rest of, like, the main region teams. Well,
Yeah.
like, their wins they should have swept, and then they lost to Genji and BDS. Like, it was not a good Swiss. They did not look a good team.
Yeah. And even regionally by the end they were losing to Gen G, and then it continued into the majors. So that wasn't a good look for G2 either. And then they ended up showing, that they were better than Gen G, considering their the teams that they beat in playoffs. And that's fair. That's fair game. But let's not deny that before that playoff, at least in my opinion, you have to start saying that Gen G were at least level, if not like one spot higher than G2. So for me, that playoff wasn't suddenly going to put them from being the same level as Gen G to suddenly, bam, top 4. I just have them just below in top 5. But I can definitely respect, like, if you make the grand final, that you put a lot of respect on that and that you naturally feel like you have to put them in the top 4. Which is kind of the same logic you'd use for Gentlemates, but we'll get that later. We'll talk about that later on. Do we have any other things to say about G2?
I do not.
I do not.
All right, we'll move on to number 4. What's your number 4, Nuggets?
So my 4th is G2.
G2 Stride. All right.
Yeah.
Then mine is Team BDS, naturally.
Mhm.
Or you Matrix.
Then mine's G2.
G2 Stride. Okay. So clearly minor disagreements. We have like nothing to talk about for this fourth
Yeah.
For
one.
these three these three teams at all. They're like
Yeah.
nothing.
No conversation to be had.
So number 3.
Yeah, so number 3, guys. Let's talk about
number
number 3.
3 is Falcons for me.
Team Falcons. Matrix, by any chance, do you agree with that one?
I do agree with that.
Yeah, by
Oh, no, it's gonna be the same.
I happen to agree as well. Yeah, let's do that. So guys, what makes Falcons such a special team? Nugget, you can go first.
Like,
I can take over if you want. Okay.
Bro's just laughing.
Well, the only loss they were handed in Swiss was Gentlemates, who, as we all know, won the major. So it may have been a sweep, which I think that kind of like maybe took it out the series a bit, because there were 2 OTs in that series, and I think it was really close. So yeah, and then in the playoffs, I feel like they got dealt a bit of a bad hand with Carmine Corp, and then again, that goal on Neo take from Atto was really just like
that
was
was
just
cold.
pop. And bearing in mind they were on match point too, so I feel like if Atto didn't score that, maybe that Falcons might have taken it. So I think Falcons definitely could have got top 4, and they did impress as well.
Yeah, they could have honestly, they could have gone on to win the event. I mean, you don't really know what's gonna happen other than that, because I kind of feel like Falcons. You got to put respect on General Mates for that 3-0 victory against Falcons, but I also think Falcons didn't really play that well in that 3-0. Though that seems to be a bit of a copium that I've been using for a lot of these. It's just I don't think they played well in that series, so we could ignore that one. But yeah, I think they were the biggest challenge for KC other than Gentlemates. So I think naturally, because of how well KC did regionally, you kind of you look at those results and feel like you got to put Falcons here because they only lost against the major winners and KC. So they got a pretty good record for this major. I think Nugget agrees, considering you got them 3rd as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anything to add for Falcons?
I mean, Falcons, Carmine, and Gentlemates easily all top 3 at the LAN. And I mean, Falcons went 4-3 against Carmine, and Carmine lost 3-4 against Gentlemates, and each series was a coin toss. Like
Yeah.
both game 7s were one goal games, like 1 goal difference. It was literally a coin toss, and Gentlemates against Gen G, but Gentlemates didn't look like the same Gentlemates that they did against Carmine and in the grand final. So yeah.
Honestly, I if people put Falcons in number one, I wouldn't even blame them. That's because I kind of feel like that's how tight, this top eight is. Like, if you just think that Falcons just, you know, could have easily won that game seven against Karmi, then, and if you think that if they play the same like that against Gentleman's that they win, then it makes sense. Because Karmi Corp, to be fair, they had a bit of a. I mean, you said it yourself, Nugget. They kind of choked against Gentleman's, so it wasn't always that
Yeah.
wasn't the cleanest series by the end. So yeah, there's definitely reason to think that Falcons could have easily won this event as well. Even though I don't think they were, the top two team, a top two team at the major, but they were very very close, as we all agree. So number two,
I mean, Corp.
Carmine Corp. Okay, Carmine Corp. What's your guys' prediction on my number two? Do you think I'll go
The
Gentlemates?
Gentlemates.
I think you went coming, Cole.
I'm going Gentlemates, unfortunately. What about you, Matrix?
Well, I'm joining you on Gentlemates.
Gentlemates, fair enough.
I
I
support Kami. How the fuck has this happened?
Hey, Nugget, I
How the
respect.
fuck has this happened?
I'm glad somebody put Gentlemates first because they deserve it. Because it's not really nice to have a conversation where if you win the major or you win worlds, you don't want people to be like, nah, but I still think they weren't the best team. So it's kind of like you don't want to have someone like that. But unfortunately, I am of the opinion that if they replay that series the next day, that Crimean would just win. So I mean, yeah, I think regionally that kind of proves it. If Gentlemates won the third regional, or the third qualifier, whatever, in EU, then this would be a very different conversation. But there's something about only showing up to the major and not any of the qualifiers that doesn't quite sit well with me, and just me calling it the best team. So I'm not quite gonna put them number one, but I'll put them number two. I couldn't put them any lower, so I guess that's that.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think me and Andrew have the idea that Gentlemates won't have this kind of insane performance again, and I feel like we're more looking to the future, where like the imminent future, not like miles away, but imminent future. I think that Carmine Corp will just reign supreme again.
Oh, Kami own Corp.
But don't worry about it. I made a slight error. But go on, defend Gentlemates for us, please.
Okay. So, first of all, Vatira against Gentlemates was horseshit. He was not there. And Rise and him had no ice in game 7. They looked good, but they didn't look like Carmine, I guess. At least I'm going to say that in game 7. I was pissed watching their performance. They kind of had they beat the teams, but it was all like coin flips. And against GT, I don't know if they would have beat them because they didn't go against them. But I mean, they had dominant performance online, but then their dominance like disappeared as soon as they went onto a LAN setting. While Gentlemates kind of did the opposite performance to Carmine, where they started shitting on people on LAN, but online they were a bit shaky.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I assume you're kind of taking into account that the fact that
Gentlemates won the major.
well, yeah, but the fact that Carmine Corp didn't show up, that means that they wouldn't show up if it happened again or something like that, or if it just like they don't deserve it
know.
because they didn't show up or something like that.
Carmine at LAN, they beat Falcons, and it was a 50-50 series. But as Matrix said, I don't think if Vital scored that goal, Carmine would have even won that game. Like, it was an out of the blue goal that kind of like carried momentum, and I don't think without that they would have won the series. And I mean, well, Gentlemates looked a lot more, I think, more consistent. Like, they had very good goals, but I think they wouldn't have needed the Atao goal to beat Falcons.
Yeah,
They wouldn't have needed that huge pop off. They were much more consistent.
I think I think let's go back to last Worlds. Vitality won the World Championship. Let's imagine BDS were the ones to beat them, and let's say BDS went to Game 7 in the quarterfinal and the semifinal to make that grand final, and then they win again in Game 7 in the grand final against Vitality. After that event, I think still everybody would have said, I mean, BDS, they deserve it. you know, obviously, but I think everyone would have still said, oh, but Vitality, they're still the best, you know, they just choked under the pressure of the grand final. So I think this is just the same. This is that case. Is Karmine Corp? They won every single regional, which was previously in a main region only done by Vitality, and I put them not quite. I don't think they were quite as dominant as Vitality. Obviously, we all saw the regionals. There were a lot of really close series.
Mm.
But I think Karmine were that good regionally. And even at the major, they weren't bad. They were still, you know, clearly top 4 at the major. Or even I'd kind of say top 2. I think you still have to say that they were better than G2 Stride, unless
They were
anyone.
definitely better than G2.
Yeah.
It's not.
Um,
It's not a contention.
yeah.
I
And then
think
they
generally
beat Falcons
Karmine-
in playoffs, so I think that kind of puts them just about above them at least. So I think you have to put Karmine Corp probably second for the major. And then first regionally, three regionals in a row.
Mm.
So I think when you look at the larger picture, you still I still favor Karmine Corp a bit over Gentamates, just more
I mean,
consistency overall.
honestly, the only thing I have is that like it's like that big old question mark, right? Like, what if they won against Gentmates and they didn't because I mean they didn't look nearly as they should have. But then it's like I don't know. We've seen before that seeds aren't always like of course they won 3 in a row. Like that's not saying like oh wow they weren't looking good. But seeds aren't everything because sometimes teams can do rocky online and then they actually show themselves at LAN. Like I think was it Moist when they won Spring Major that time ago.
Hmm
I don't think they went into it as the high seed in the EU, did they?
No, it's because BDS had probably
Yeah,
the worst like skill to performance like in the major I've ever witnessed in any event ever, including
but
like previous like old RLCS worlds. That was
like
something else.
Moist looked definitely very very good, but I don't know. It feels like if a team shows up more on LAN, I rate that a little bit higher because I mean they showed up on LAN. So just because Gentamate showed up more against Carmine and they won, I just had to put them above them. I mean,
Yeah.
top 3 is literally just you can switch them and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's a very tight one. Gentlemates, they had I mean, they literally, series wise had the perfect major. They did not lose a series, so I respect it a lot, and I'm glad you put them first. It's
Cool.
you know, just a slight difference in opinion. So, you know, it's all Gucci. I'm not sure why I clapped. But yeah, I guess that's it. Do you have any other things we want to talk about? You know? All right, good night,
What?
Matrix.
He did not want to be here from the start. What the fuck was that?
It's like, can
No,
it go away,
you guys-
please?
You guys want to
my
be done?
room, my room is dark, and also I did wake up at 6.
You did,
You want a
that's
medal?
true. So yeah, there we go. That's the video. Yeah, let me know what you think. Do we all have shit lists? Should we all have Gentlemates first? Should we not have Moist 10th? Let me know. Alright, see you later. Oh.
I'm sorry, why did you yawn? Why did you yawn?
I need to add like comedic value, you know.